Hi, everyone. Mitch Jackson. Welcome to another Human Social interview. I've got a very special guest today. What threw me off, Dorie, is I've been doing my interviews on a different platform. We're back on the Spreecast platform, which I absolutely love to death. This is the coolest platform in the world. And I've got one of the coolest people in the world joining us today. Her name is Dorie Clark. And Dorie's a marketing and strategy consultant, professional speaker, and frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, and the World Economic Forum blog. She's a very fascinating individual. I'm intimidated introducing you, Dorie, just because of all the awesome things you've done over the years. But I'm going to try to do my best. You've been named to the Huffington Post 100 Must Follow on Twitter list, and also named to Inc. magazine's 100 Great Leadership Speakers for your next conference. You've been recognized by Forbes magazine as one of the 25 professional networking experts to watch this year in 2015, and you're the author of a great book I read some time ago titled Reinventing You, Define Your Brand and Imagine Your Future. We have you on Spreecast today, Dorie, because you've got a new book coming out next Tuesday. And it's titled Stand Out, How to Find Your Breakthrough Idea and Build a Following Around It. It sounds like an awesome book. Welcome to the show, Dorie.
Hey, thank you so much, Mitch. Glad to be talking with you.
Well, I'm glad that you found time to be on our show today. Tell us a little bit about your new book. What was the motivation behind the new book, and what is the message you're going to be sharing with your readers?
Yeah, so Standout is really about how to become a recognized expert in your field. And the reason that I wrote it is that I would like to live in a world where the people with the best ideas win, not just the people with the loudest voices. But I realize that that's never going to happen unless we actually provide people, talented professionals with the information they need to understand how the system works. How is it that some people are able to break through and really become recognized in their fields and other people aren't? What's the difference? What does that look like? And so I interviewed about 50 top thought leaders in a variety of different fields, everybody from business thinkers like Daniel Pink and Seth Godin to experts in genomics and urban planning, and really broke down the processes by which they came up with their big ideas and became known for them, so that hopefully regular professionals who want to make an impact, who want to make a positive difference, will be able to follow the same strategies in order to do so in their own lives.
Does Standout apply only to online social media efforts, or is it also something we can use offline in the offline world?
Yeah, great question. And in fact, use of online tools and social media is actually just a small part of it, to tell the truth. I mean, it's the most visible part in a lot of ways because, people can see it. Oh, they're tweeting a lot or they're blogging a lot. But actually, one thing that I discovered is that when it comes to the spreading of your ideas, it's really a three-part process. And that is step number one, creating a strong network. This is the first necessary step, is getting people around you, a trusted group of advisors who can help you refine your ideas and give you the initial support and feedback you need to help, make them good and to give it that initial lift. The second step is this more visible part where you begin sharing your ideas with the world. And it can be through social media, through blogging, or putting things on Facebook or whatever. It also can be more old-fashioned strategies like giving speeches or writing op-eds or whatever. But the basic idea, this is about building an audience, and that is about finding ways to make your ideas visible to the public so that people can discover them. And then the final step is what I call building a community. This is where the communication is no longer just, you conveying the message. It's the place where your message has taken on legs. People have looked at it, they've found it to be helpful in their own lives. And as a result of that, they're eager to talk about it and they become ambassadors of your idea or of your brand.
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's interesting. Just I'm quite a bit older than you, and I've been in business for a long, long time. I've met some fascinating people, people that should be changing the world if other people knew about them. And what's interesting is sometimes the brightest people, people with the best ideas, their voices aren't heard, their art isn't shared for whatever reason. Maybe it's self-limiting doubt, or maybe it's just because they don't know how to put themselves out there and share their message. And, I always tell people, especially young trial lawyers, don't be afraid just to get out there and be yourself and share your own unique art. If you stutter and you want to be a trial lawyer, you know what? Be the best stutterer in the world. The jury will get you. They'll relate to how genuine you are. If you try to be somebody that you're not, it's not going to click. Now, that's easier said than done. So in your book, when you're showing people different approaches to get out there and to develop their community and develop their networks, do you have any tips that you can share with someone that maybe doesn't feel as though they have anything to share, or they don't have the self-confidence to really take that first step and put themselves out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the stories that I actually tell in Standout is probably, I think the subject is probably familiar to most people, but I imagine that the actual story is not. And that is Rachel Ray. I actually, I'm not much of a cook and I don't really watch the Food Network very much. So ironically, I actually really got to know about Rachel Ray because it turns out that a Harvard Business Review case study by my friend Boris Groisberg was written about her and about her experience of how she came to be a well-known chef. I didn't really know anything about that. But it turns out, I mean, she has this very humble background. She worked as a buyer at a gourmet grocery store in outside of New York, and she started doing her famed 30-minute meals because literally she was doing it for the local Price Chopper, and the reason that she was doing it was that no actual chefs would accept the low pay for doing these demos, and so okay, she'll do it, and so she starts doing this. Eventually, she writes a cookbook. It is not published by a glamorous New York publishing house. It is published by a one-woman press in her little town, and she just keeps sort of soldiering on. Eventually, as a gift, someone ends up giving her book to the producer of the Today Show, and there is, in the sort of confluence of the stars, there's a big snowstorm, and everybody cancels. Their flights are all canceled. Nobody can get to New York for the Today Show. So the producer says, what about this Rachel Ray woman? Because she lives near Albany. So she drives 9 hours in the snow to get to New York City, does her first Today Show appearance. She's a hit, and literally the next day she's offered a contract with the Food Network. But what is significant about this, and the reason I tell this story, is that when the Food Network hired Rachel Ray, what the Food Network was known for was glamorous celebrity chefs. They were known for people who owned restaurants, some of the best restaurants in America, like Emeril Lagasse. They were known for people who, were trained culinary artisans. And a lot of people look at Rachel Ray and say, why her? She hasn't been to culinary school. She doesn't own a restaurant. A lot of people legitimately, they actually say, my wife can cook better than her. My mom can cook better than her. Why her? But the truth is, for people who think, oh, I don't have something to offer, when Rachel Ray actually got offered the contract with the Food Network, she tried to stand up and leave. She said, I'm not a real chef. You've made a mistake. You don't actually want me. But the truth was that was exactly why they wanted her, because no one could relate to these super famous chefs. If a super famous chef makes a dish on TV, you don't know if you can do that. They've had, 20 years of training. If Rachel Ray makes a dish on TV and you know that she's just like you and she's never been to culinary school, you can do it. And so I think that for a lot of people, what's really important is to reframe your perspective. What might seem boring and unremarkable and, oh, other people can do this better than me. The truth is you have something special. You have something significant. And sometimes if you just change the context a little bit, the context was the Food Network actually really needed exactly what Rachel Ray had to offer. You got to appreciate it and step up and own that.
Well, I love what you just said, because it's encouraging for people to hear. And for those of you just joining us on the recorded version of this particular Spreecast on the Human Side Interviews, I'm speaking with Dorie Clark, author of Stand Out, a new book coming out on Tuesday. And powerful message. I mean, you're talking about life-changing approaches right here. And it really is a life-changing approach. And it's not about her being lucky enough to be in the right place with the perfect storm actually hitting. It's about her having the confidence to actually take that next step and go on the show. A lot of people wouldn't do that, and they wouldn't have the self-confidence to do that. Dorie, with respect to someone that understands your message and wants to share their art, wants to share their unique message with the world, whatever it might be, politics, business, religion, hobbies, passions, are there a couple of steps they can take to start the process? I mean, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of people expect too much of themselves at first, and then when they don't necessarily achieve their lofty goal immediately, they say, well, it's not working, and give up too soon. I think that's really the challenge. I do in Standout have a section talking about all of this, about sort of the long arc of these things. I mean, what is difficult, and you have to be upfront with people about this, is that it's not necessarily a fast process, and you do have to have faith that because you are doing the right things, it will create a good result for you down the road. You are not going to get instantly famous and successful by writing one blog post. You're going to get famous and successful by writing one blog post a week for many, many weeks. And the challenge is, you could be doing it for 3 months and you're not seeing any results. And so, does that mean it's not working, or does that mean it's not working yet? But ultimately, the faith that you have to have is that if you believe in your idea, you want to share it with the world. And really, the thing to highlight here is, it is about making yourself findable in this internet-driven world. The amazing thing is that no matter what your niche is, no matter what you're interested in, there's going to be someone somewhere in the world who is interested in it and wants to join that community with you. The trick is, can they find you? And if you are raising your hand, if you are putting out the beacon and saying, hey, I'm here, I like, XYZ, then that person can come to you. And over time, you begin to build up a reputation around it. So I talk about a lot of different strategies, and blogging is certainly one. One quick kind of tip or life hack that I'll share with your readers. This is something from Robert Scoble, who's a technology opinion leader. He actually gave me what I think is a great tip. He said that when someone emails him with a question, he actually never writes back to them with an answer. What he does instead is he says, I will answer you, but only if you post it on Quora, which is this question and answer website. And that way, he says, if I emailed them back an answer, one person would benefit. But if I write an answer and put it on Quora, then 5 people or 50 people or 5,000 people can benefit from it. So it's a way of really increasing your leverage and the scope of the people that you're able to help.
I love that. I've actually reached out to Robert to get him on the show, and hopefully that'll happen pretty soon. We both were early users of Google Glass, and he obviously before me, but as far as lawyers go, is one of the first, and really enjoyed the technology. It's interesting when you talk about community, Dorie. You and I don't know if you know this, but I first connected with you on Chris Brogan's Owner Magazine. We were both writing for Owner Magazine, and so that little community, we all had very similar approaches to the digital world and community and doing business the human way, and that's how the community starts. And fast forward a year, and here you are in the show. It's a process. What's interesting is we just got back from London. We just took a spring break trip last week to London, and on the flight over and back, I read a new book by Mark Schaefer. I don't remember the name, but it had to do with content, something or other.
Yeah,
and what Mark was talking about is a great book, and it was recommended by Chris Brogan.
I'm actually in that book.
You are in that book. I told you it was a great book, okay? But what's interesting, what jumped out and hit me was he really emphasized the point that there's a lot of good content out there right now. And it's more than just writing a good blog post. There's a lot of good content. A lot of smart businesses and individuals know how to share that content in the right context now. And you know where I'm going with this. There's another element if you want to be heard, if you want your voice to rise above the noise. And I think he uses the term ignite, igniting that content. Share with our, if, since you brought it up, share with our viewers, if you don't mind, the context that you were presented in the book about, and your thoughts on how people can take great content in the right context and tweak it their own unique individual way so that it rises above the noise. How can we do that?
Wow. Well, it's a little dangerous actually, Mitch, because I actually don't remember exactly what Mark quoted me on. So, so I'm not sure what I said.
I want to know. I want details. Well, you're not being cross-examined, so don't worry about it. It's all good. But, taking that general philosophy, what's the next step so we can get the good content in the right context heard by the masses? What's going to separate us from everyone else?
Sure. So, I mean, a few thoughts I have, and they may be the ones that I shared with Mark or not. We'll see. But a few thoughts that I have off the top of my head. So, number one, when it comes to content creation, I do think, for a company, if you're Coca-Cola or whatever, sure, you can be everywhere, you can do everything. For an individual, you really have to focus and prioritize and triage a little bit. So you need to pick the places where you excel. I spend a lot more time on Twitter. I do a little bit on Facebook. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's really it. I'm not on Instagram. I am not on Pinterest. I am not on Meerkat. You have to sort of choose. And so it's better to go deep in certain places.
Actually, I think you are. I think we're meerkatting right now.
Ooh, nice. That's right. I'm an inadvertent meerkat subject, maybe. But yeah, that's right. We'll go meta. But that's one piece. Another thing that I think it really is critical, and I talk about this in my book, Stand Out, is that if you take the time to create a piece of content, particularly if it is a substantial piece of long form content like a blog post, you owe it to yourself to give it as much exposure as possible. And the way to do that is through parceling it out into bite-sized pieces that can be shared in a variety of ways. So I actually profile a guy named Mark Fiddleman who spends a ridiculous amount of time on his blog posts that he does for Forbes, sometimes literally up to 100 hours per blog post, because he creates these comprehensive roundup posts where it'll be something like maybe the 25 most social CMOs or something like that. So he's crunching numbers and data and doing interviews and whatever. But the post is so valuable, and as part of it, he views it as networking because he's able to meet all these people and connect with them. And then, the CMOs will be sharing it and retweeting it and whatever, but he doesn't let it stop with a blog post. That would be a waste if you're spending so much time doing something. He turns it into a slide share. He turns it into, like Instagram placards. He has a million different ways. There'll be pull quotes and tweets, so that you're doing one thing, but you get 100 hits out of it.
I love that. I mean, it's about being efficient. It's about repurposing great content the right way on the different unique platforms that's platform friendly to maximize your work effort. I can't imagine spending 100 hours on a blog post. I wish I had that kind of time, and I hope someday when I'm retired, I've got that kind of time. Couple quick things before I let you run, Dorie. I'm keynoting later this month up in Denver at a legal convention. I'll be speaking with lawyers about how to use mobile technology to build better relationships with existing and prospective clients. Do you have any tips in your book or today on Spreecast I can share with my audience in a couple of weeks about using mobile, using the steps in Stand Out to help build better relationships with professionals with their clients, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, something like that?
That's
really
you on the
spot, but I know you're quick, so I know you can handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, in terms of mobile technology, it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that the question for me, it's less mobile, qua mobile. It's not necessarily like, wow, I need a lawyer. Let's look on Yelp right now. I mean, I think that's probably not how most people are necessarily using Yelp or using, looking for lawyers. It's a little different for professional service providers than it would be like, oh, wow, I really want a burrito right now. But I do think that mobile.
Sometimes it is the same thing.
That's right. That's right. So I think that what is useful about mobile though is understanding that in terms of the overall arc of how people consume content, more and more of that is going to be on mobile, and so we have to be aware of the implications. So, for instance, I actually am a big advocate for blogging. I still think that particularly for professional service providers and anyone who is in a sort of knowledge worker profession, that is so critical because it allows, I don't necessarily know how good of a lawyer someone is if I am not a lawyer who has worked with them. I don't know how to evaluate their work, but if I can read the way they think about the world, if I can see what they think is important and get their take on it, I can see if we seem simpatico. And so using that to drive the issues is really important. And understanding, odds are a lot of it is going to be, consumed on a phone. And so, long form is good, but, being cognizant that if you can do things in like the 3 or 4 minute bites in between when somebody is on the subway or is waiting in line at the store, that's powerful. Making sure that you have a mobile, responsive and mobile friendly website is, mandatory these days. I think all of those things are useful to think about.
Well, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but that was a fantastic answer. And you've already given me a couple of things to share with my audience. One of the things I'm going to focus on is how to use mobile to communicate with your clients the way they want to be communicated with. In other words, the younger generation may not want to communicate with me with the phone. They may want to text message me or use email or DM me on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
And lawyers need to get up to speed with communicating with clients and creating that relationship that's exemplary the way the clients want it. As Brian Solis would say, create the exemplary client experience by using mobile technology. The attorneys that aren't doing that are shooting themselves in the foot, and they don't realize it. Let's do this real quick. My favorite part of the show is going back in time. I want to take you by the hand and go back in time. Let's go back to North Carolina, okay? And let's go back to North Carolina where you grew up before you started your accelerated career through school and what you're doing today. What early life influences affected you in a way that got you to think the way you're thinking today, that made you want to graduate? What was it, college at 18? And go on? I mean, what's that all about? What were the early life influences? And if you want to give a hat tip to somebody special, who would that be?
Yeah. Well, I'll say that, I mean, probably like everybody says, I mean, my mom was really great. She was really critical in terms of sort of instilling a sense of confidence in me. That was really powerful. Another interesting factor, which I think is like almost a little bit of a weird wrinkle, was that my dad was an alcoholic, but he got sober before I was born, but he was really into AA culture. And so when I was growing up, he was, in fact, not just somebody who went to AA, but he was a doctor, he was a psychiatrist, and he specialized in helping treat alcoholics. So like my whole childhood, the big thing was when we took family vacations, it was to like alcohol conferences. And so, I'd get dragged along all the time to AA meetings. I mean, not like sitting in the middle of them, but, kind of reading in the, corridor or whatever.
Sure.
And so it was interesting because I think that, the kind of ethos about like, I think the principles of it are actually very helpful in the sense that of just being clear, like there's some things you can control, there's some things you can't, and you have to have the wisdom to know the difference, as they say. And I think it's a useful philosophical outlook because if you apply your focus to the right things, that is really powerful. And because you can make a lot of progress, you can get a lot of traction on them. If you're applying your focus to things that you really can't control, you're going to be frustrated your whole life. And so being able to really be clear on that and just know that that's what you're doing, I think has been sort of a useful framework for me.
I want to come back real quick before I let you run from your childhood because I have another follow-up question. But you said something, and if I don't ask it, I'm going to forget it. I've never been accused of being the sharpest knife in the drawer. But it's interesting as you get older. What I've learned is to focus on the things that you're good at, and don't get hung up on the things that you're not good at. A lot of people spend all their time practicing an area of their life that they're just not any good at for whatever reason, and they're missing the opportunity to excel on the things that they're very, very, very good at, whether it's business, sports, the arts, whatever it might be. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But I do want to go back just because you grew up in a pre-internet world.
Yeah.
It's looking at you, it's hard for me to believe that, but I certainly did. And I actually think that gave me an advantage. It gave me an advantage once I started going online back in the late 90s. I think our first website was 96, if you can believe that. And then over the last 5, 6, 7 years on social, I think that's given me a distinct advantage with people skills. Your thoughts on that? Did you talk about that in your book? And if not, what are your thoughts on that? Are there pros and cons with that? Or?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think that's entirely possible. I mean, certainly you read a lot of articles about how millennials may be at risk of being bereft of interpersonal skills because they don't have to cultivate them. You've got your phone as a crutch, etc. For me, I mean, overall, I wish I had grown up in the internet era. I look back on so much of what we did, and I just think it was barbarous. Like literally, it was like you're living in like the Flintstones. I mean, I can't even comprehend it. You want information, and for me, I would subscribe to these, magazines. Like I wanted to know stuff. I lived in this little town, and I'd subscribe to magazines, or and you'd be mailed a newspaper that you'd get like a week later, and you'd still read it. Like that is absolute barbarity. I used to work on I was a press secretary on a gubernatorial campaign, and this is in 2002 even, and they didn't have GPS then. And so we were going to locations all around the state, and literally it was so hard, it was so complicated. We had to have volunteer drivers, and when people, because we couldn't afford to have like a paid full-time driver on the campaign. So when people would volunteer, we would tell them they'd have to volunteer for 2 days, one day to actually drive the candidate, and the day before to pre-drive the route so they would know where they were going because GPS didn't exist. And, you look at stuff like that and it's just like, what a waste of time. We lived in, people were just rubbing freaking sticks together, Mitch. And so I mean, there's some, yeah, there's some good things about it, I guess. I mean, it gave me a lot of drive. It gave me a lot of drive to escape my little small town, but for the sake of my psyche and other people's, I wish we'd had the internet, but just was not an option.
It's funny because I've lived that life you just described, and I much prefer today. It's much more exciting. So much is happening so exponentially fast. This is where it's at. This is great. Having said that, I think a lot of friends of mine that are online now that grew up with me who are engaging on social, I think they know how to ask open-ended questions. They know how to have a dialogue online in a chat, whereas maybe some of the kids that I know in high school, my children's friends and things like that, it hasn't quite developed yet. And I don't know if that has to do with their age or the environment that they're growing up in. And I guess we'll find out over the years. I mean, just brilliant people, but the communication skills are just somewhat lacking. And Dorie, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Everyone, if you've been listening, I've been speaking with Dorie Clark, author of a new book coming out on Tuesday, Stand Out, How to Find Your Breakthrough Idea and Build a Following Around It. I'll be one of the first ones. In fact, I'm going to order it, Dorie, as soon as we get off the show. Sounds fantastic. And I do want to ask you if what you have coming up in 2015. Please share with our viewers what you're doing, where you're going to be. If you have a book tour, what's next on the list for Dorie Clark?
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. I do have a book tour actually, and so if people are interested in connecting with me on my website, you can see a list of upcoming speaking engagements. My website is dorieclark.com, DORIECLARK, and I'm going to be doing book tour events that are open to the public in New York, San Francisco, Washington, Boston, and Los Angeles, among others. And I'll also just mention for your viewers, Mitch, that if people are interested in this question of how they can stand out, how they can find their breakthrough idea and build a following around it, I actually created a free 42-page workbook that is an adaptation of Stand Out and it is available for download on my website, again, for free at dorieclark.com. And it has a list of 139 different questions that people can, literally just walk through step by step to help them come up with and identify their breakthrough ideas.
That sounds exciting. I mean, I'm going to check it out myself. I'll tell you right now, one of the things I found just having helped a lot of people start a lot of companies, it's a matter of taking action. A lot of us have good intentions and good ideas, but you don't take the time to take the action to put things into motion. I'm going to take the actions to go through your checklist, to go through this 40+ page process to see exactly where I end up at the end. It's going to take some time and energy, but it sounds to me like it'll be well worth my time. And I just appreciate you being on the show, Dorie. This has been fantastic. It's nice to finally meet you in person, or visually anyway. See, isn't that weird? It's nice to meet you in person. And listen, if you're ever here in Orange County, Southern California, reach out and connect with me. Lunch or dinner's on me. It'd be my pleasure. And good luck with the book. Good luck with everything you're doing. And please do stay in touch, okay?
Thanks a lot, Mitch. Take care.
All right, you take care. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please share the Spreecast using the buttons over next to Dorie on the recorded version with all of your family, friends, and followers. You guys take care, and remember to always make today your masterpiece. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.